1.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's installment of the Trenchless Technology webinar series. Today's presentation, Beyond Hockey, Canada Values Its Underground Infrastructure. This recorded educational presentation is sponsored by Madewell Products Corporation, headquartered and anchored in Alpharetta, Georgia for the last 46 years. My name is Mike Kezdi, Managing Editor for Trenchless Technology CANADA magazine, and I'll serve as your host for the next hour. I'd like to take this time to remind everyone that any views or opinions presented in this webcast are those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent those of Benjamin Media Inc., the publisher of Trenchless Technology Canada, nor does Benjamin Media Inc. endorse any products or methods presented. If you'd like to expand your view, click on the arrows in the lower right of the video box to enter full screen mode. I've hosted other webinars with Madewell and will share with you that to get the greatest value over the next 58 minutes, be interactive. By this, I mean, if you have any questions, jot them down, and the folks at Madewell will communicate answers to every question received. With that, allow me to introduce our subject matter experts today. As the owner of Stray Cat Industrial Services, based out of Kamloops, British Columbia, Sean Danko was originally scheduled to provide a contractor's voice for today's discussion, but due to a family health issue, Chris Morris, Business Development Manager, will represent Stray Cat in this discussion. In the capacity of business development, Chris has served Stray Cat for more than 3 years and is NASCO certified in pipe, manhole, and lateral assessment. You'll also hear from Brian Gibson, the owner of Go Trenchless Zone, a reliable partner in the rehabilitation of the municipal pipe industry. 23 years ago, Brian started in the industry as the Canadian sales manager with Aries Industries. Now headquartered in Cambridge, Ontario, Brian provides infrastructure owners, specifying engineers, and utility contractors access to quality, well-priced restoration materials. It's also worth noting here that Gibson and Go Trenchless Zone recently signed a master distribution agreement to be the supplier of Madewell products across Canada. Our final speaker is Craig Klosser, the Vice President of Madewell Products and instrumental in coaching Madewell certified applicators for excellence in the execution of the mainstay composite liner. At the core, Klosser is a contractor with decades of experience controlling I&I, coating vertical and horizontal structures with cementitious mortar, as well as epoxy top coat for corrosion protection. With that said, let's turn the presentation over to Craig.
Hello, everyone. The Madewell name and the Madewell process, let's see here. The Madewell name and the Madewell process became to be in 1962 under the company U.S. Steel. As U.S. Steel would build these forms, as you're seeing here, and put mortar, which is known as the ML72 today, they would then spin cast. As that mortar started to set, they would then spin cast coal tar epoxy onto the inside of this pipe while the mortar was still wet. This process of spinning the epoxy onto wet mortar became to be known as the mainstay composite liner. With millions of miles of pipe sold, U.S. Steel decided to divest, where the Steel family ended up taking over the mainstay process in 1972. With this proven process, we fast forward 50 years to now, and these are some of the instances, some of the structures we get into today. So the main thing here is what we get into with the mainstay composite liner is the manhole rehab, where, as you can see in this picture, they are spinning mortar down through these, we call it the Franco double barrel spin caster. Mortar comes through the hose, goes down through 2 tubes, and gets goes into the bowl. It slings it out, centrifugally cast the mortar out onto the manhole walls. And this is what I would say we do the most of, is the manhole rehab. 21,000 manholes in North America, according to the U.S. EPA. Nearly 50% are in need of repair or replacement. We get into a ton of brick manholes still. I've been doing this 27 years, mainly on the contractor side, and still today there's just tons of them being covered, brick holes that are being covered. But usually we put an inch of mortar on the brick, half inch on the precast. But yeah, we spin the mortar on and then get in there, finish it out, and then we apply the epoxy, basically just like they did on the pipe back in 1962. Both of them cure at the same time. So as it's curing, as that mortar's drying out and everything's sucking in, it sucks in that epoxy. That's how we get our great adhesion, and it becomes the mainstay composite liner. We get into some tunnels, and especially in the past few years, these tunnels have really been looked at. Restoring tunnels. Most new tunnels constructed today are temporarily holding structures to protect against SSO with combined sewer overflow, rainfall events. It can be a corrosive environment, especially with the overflow of sewers in there. So they'll go in there, pressure wash these structures, these pipes, tunnels, test the walls, basically pH test the walls, make sure it's ready for the mortar to go on. And a lot of these are being either spin casted or a big tunnel like this, shotcrete, and they're using the geopolymers today. You get into a highly corrosive area, we still put the epoxy on, and if it's storm, we put our ML72 HP on there, HP being for horizontal pipe. There's really no need for the geopolymer in the storm lines, so we stick with the ML72 HP. Right here, the 24-inch or larger, we've done smaller horizontal pipelining. Most of these, what we find, we're doing these every day now, our contractors are, just all over the states. And what we find is usually just the bottom where the flow has been is where it's deteriorated or even gone some of the time, big holes in the bottom of the pipe. Most of the time they spin the whole pipe. Sometimes they go from spring line to spring line, just covering that bottom since the rest of the pipe is good. Again, we have done smaller pipes. We would prefer to do 24-inch and larger. So we would basically, when we put these spin casters in there, we usually have a person behind the spin caster. About 10 foot back, we'll have another one spraying the pipe down with a water, just so the pipe's not dry. And then, depending on the length of it, we might have another person halfway back in the pipe, and their main purpose would be just to keep the slack off of the guys up by the spinner. You get a person all the way back at the pipe, and by the time you pull that heavy hose, you jerk it or pull it too hard, you might miss, a foot section or something in the pipe there. So that's why we use so many, usually 4 to 5 people, one at the spinner, one right behind them spraying the pipe, one in the middle of the pipe if it's a long section, keeping the mortar hose pulled off of them, and then somebody at the winch, and then somebody mixing the mortar. Here's a big pipe we did, I believe this was in Virginia. These corrugations on this pipe was 4 inches thick, so they used the shotcrete on this, just because the spinner is not going to centrifugally cast it out that far. It will, but it's just going to be more like a dust. So you want to use the shotcrete on these bigger ones. 96-inch, 4-inch corrugation, 5-inch consistent total thickness. So they wanted it to come above the ribs on the pipe, even though you can still see them because the mortar is going to follow the design of the pipe. But that was a 5-inch thickness. And with our mortar, you can spray all of that at once, or you can, a safer approach would be spray it twice. So go through, spray it, come back the next day. On a pipe like this, there's only so much you can do in a day anyway. So it's best to go through and get 2.5 inches on the first day, and then come back again and hit it again to put your total thickness on there. This one here, of course, it doesn't matter if you've got a bunch of slack in the pipe, so you don't need as many people there in a bigger pipe. You just have to set it up like here. They're working off of a wood platform to get up and be able to spray that. Another one here, we also do tanks, wet wells, lift stations. This one here was the mainstay composite liner. So whether you put all the mortar on at once and then come back and put a primer on it, or if you do a section of the wall with mortar and spray it with epoxy, you just don't want the mortar drying out. So if you're going to spray a big tank like this, our recommendation is to spray the mortar on the whole tank. And by the time you're done, of course, it's going to be already hard. So then we would require a primer, our 927 primer. You let it get tack-free, and then you come back and put the epoxy on. We've also done tanks to where you go in and you do a section of the wall with mortar, and then you spray it with epoxy while it's wet. That's the recommended way if you can do that. We get really good adhesion between the mortar and epoxy when it's done, when they're both wet like that. All right, so the utility contractor. I know contractors work in the real world, and pleased to introduce Madewell certified applicator in British Columbia, and that is Chris Morris of Stray Cat.
Thanks, Craig.
Back to Chris.
Thanks, Craig, for that warm welcome, and hi, everyone. So following on from what Craig was talking about there, we, as a contractor, our original background was in the oil and gas industry, and we first came across Madewell when we were presented with a challenge from one of our clients, Husky Energy, up in Prince George, British Columbia. They had a service manhole, which it was a sewer on an oil and gas site, and there were a lot of process chemicals in this particular, running through this particular main line, which led it to being a particularly corrosive and harsh environment. And you'll see from the next slide just how bad the deterioration and how bad some of the conditions were in that particular main line. You can see from this image here, you've got the reinforcement fully visible in many places. You've got a whole void visible in this manhole, which, you know, when you're surveying, as anyone who surveys and does CCTV inspection will know that you grade that as a 5, which is as bad as it gets. You can see there's some staining on the wall from some I&I there. So this is a particularly severe level of deterioration due to extreme levels of H2S, as well as your usual sewer and organic matter that you would have running through there. You've got some process chemicals which are really causing this to be a particularly severely corroded and deteriorated structure. And this was so this is what we were faced with on our first one, and we came across the mainstay composite liner, which kind of ticked all the boxes for us with this. One added challenge with this project was that we weren't actually allowed into this manhole due to the levels of H2S in here and due to the hazard it posed to workers. This was a no-go zone. We had to carry out all of the work on this from the surface level. So we actually, this is where we utilised the tools that Madewell had, the spin casting tools. We invested in our first Madewell trailer, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But having the facility to be able to do this entire rehabilitation remotely was key in the success of this project. As you can see, the surface temperature of the manhole is over 200 Fahrenheit. And some of the levels of degradation I was talking about there, you've got the reinforcement. I mean, you've got the ladder rungs there looking like toothpicks. They're really not good. But we were able to fully rehabilitate this structure by putting on a layer of ML72 restoration mortar, which also filled the voids. Again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but we were able to fill some of those larger voids, and we were able to cover that some of that reinforcement that was shown, and then an immediate top coat of the DS500 solids epoxy. So this was, again, our first project, and this is what really opened the door for us as a contractor into the world of wastewater and into the world of manhole rehabilitation. We have delivered several projects using the Madewell system over the past 5 years. However, this is a particular project I would like to highlight because it posed some unique challenges due to the depth of the actual drop shafts and then the length of the tunnel that we had to line with this. We were in this particular tunnel. There were high levels of I&I, so we did have to do a lot of leak chasing, especially around the joints. This was all precast, and we were dealing obviously with this particular depth and distance, and it was something that, again, the Madewell equipment was something that helped us with that. The fact that we were able to work at such a depth and at such a distance from the trailer, that really helped us. And we used the horizontal spin casting tool for this. So again, Craig kind of showed you a photo where they were lining a culvert before. The diameter of this pipe was such that we were able to spin cast it. However, we've also over the years, we've been lining some lift stations, some larger tanks using the product, and we've actually used the shotcrete application for that, like Craig mentioned before. So it's an extremely versatile system. It's something that we get a lot of support from Madewell on. Just coming back to that original project, the Husky project I mentioned before, with that being our first project, Madewell sent a representative to site, and they were able to ensure that we were following all of the steps that we've been trained in. And then since then, we've been on a roll with this stuff. We are a certified applicator. We've been gaining experience using the products in a variety of different situations. I think the reason I wanted to highlight those particular projects is because they show the diversity of the projects that we do deliver with these. But this can really deliver value for a client as well because of the fact that we can, again, I'm probably going to talk about this later on, but the fact that we are immediately top coating and forming a strong adhesion and bond between the structural element, the cementitious element, and the epoxy over the top. It means that we can quickly apply spin cast and just produce and rehab manhole after manhole. So on larger projects where there's a large work scope and there's a number of manholes to rehab, it really allows us to get multiple structures done in a day, and it means that we can deliver best possible value for the client. But with that said, I will hand you back to Mike.
Great, thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting first half of today's webinar. So let's take a minute to recap what we have heard. Chris just took us on a journey through a pair of projects that benefited from Stray Cat's expertise and Madewell's products. Before that, Craig talked about the problems Madewell products solves every day, including manhole rehab, restoring large diameter pipe, tunnels, above grade and below grade tanks. Madewell provides the materials, certified applicators to do the work, and they are trained, equipped, and certified to perform because execution is everything. And we'll hear more about execution is everything coming up. That's enough for me now. Let's return to our program. Craig, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. So we spoke earlier about contractors working in the real world. Here's a true real-world example. So I work very close with all of our certified applicators, whether it's helping them with the job itself, or one of the main things I do is helping them competitively bid projects. A lot of times it's the newer contractors that are just getting into it. They don't know, hey, how do I bid this project? How do I figure out all of the material, the right amount of material, the number of hours that it's going to take us to do the job? So I do this every week with contractors. I'll run numbers on a job. I used to work as a contractor and quote these projects. So basically, I'll come up with all the material, the labor hours, the equipment, everything you need on the job, and put that together. And that gives them basically a base of what to look for. What, you know, here's all the material that Craig's given me. Here's the hours and the manpower that he says I'll need to complete this job, or the testing included. And then they can look at it and say, hey, I want to bump this up, or whatever they want to do with that. But that's one of the things I do all the time is help them with the numbers, or just putting out quotes on materials. They'll give me the diameter of the pipe or the manhole and the length of it. I'll ask for the thickness, and then I'll send them a quote on all the material that they would need for that project. So that determines how many people they're going to use, and just several different variables to go into that quote and come up with. So the good thing about having Brian as our rep in Canada is having material at his facility. We just did live demonstrations, presentations here a week ago, and I got to say it was nice to be able to go into his warehouse and see all the material, all the Madewell material that he has on the floor. So whether it's a chimney seal, hydraulic cement, the mainstay composite liner, or horizontal lining product, he has this. So shipping from the state takes a lot of time. Getting the product through customs is both time and expensive. So again, with Chris having that over in Cambridge, he can get it out and get it to contractors a lot quicker than it takes us to get it to them here from the States. So, so it isn't, let's see, climbing in the shoes of the contractor, we asked the question, isn't there an easy way to do business in Canada? So the answer to that would be, again, Brian, our master distributor who stocks all of this. And you guys will learn from Brian here in a minute, and how to get a hold of him, all that good stuff. So, but having that there, that's basically easy to do business with. There's more It'd be beneficial if the master distributor knew the trenchless industry well, knew the contractors, engineers, owners, with a good reputation to bring trust into the relationship. You must know Madewell has made great decision an appointment Trenchless Zone of our master distributor in Canada, Brian Gibson. So again, Brian's got all the inventory in there, and as it starts to go away, he'll continue the stock on that, keep it stocked. So I'm proud of what we do and how we do it. I'm pleased to introduce to you new business partner who we serve as the voice of Canada for Madewell. That's Brian Gibson.
Thank you, Craig, and to you too as well, Don. Don and I have known each other since my days at Aries Industries. Yes, Go Trenchless Zone is now a Madewell supply chain partner for certified applicators in Canada, but I'm also a member of their team assisting with quotes, engineering specification, and with a dozen years of trenchless technology experience. This is what I was meant to do and meant to be and meant to do, and I will make the most of it for the underground infrastructure restoration work in Canada. Our mandate here is to work with municipality, pipe owners, and contractors with a goal of providing the best-in-class installation process training, products, and services when performing manhole and or horizontal pipe restoration. Madewell and Go Trenchless Zone have the same philosophy. We provide a total package solution. As such, we must do the system justice by working with installers that are eager to follow the detailed processes to perform and achieve successful installation. All types of lining installations are successful when processes can be duplicated from job to job. As Craig mentioned, we're centrally located in Canada, an hour west of Toronto. We have a facility here that inventories the Madewell products, and we're eager to work within all of Canada. Some of the inventory is shown in the following slides, but we do have all products inventoried, as Craig mentioned, and we're grateful to work with an existing and well-rounded team. Mainstay ML72 obviously is one of the main products for Madewell, well inventoried in our facility in Cambridge, Ontario, as well as the epoxy coatings and chimney seals. All products are available here. I'm grateful to be part of an excellent team and truly appreciate everyone on this webinar's input on how Madewell products and Go Trenchless Zone can assist our industry in Canada. As Craig alluded to earlier, we had an open house on October the 11th, where we had an education day surrounding Madewell products and provided live demos to the attendees in attendance. The one-day event was attended by over 20 industry professionals. Our goal was to have as many City Public Works Department staff attend as possible. We were delighted to have City Public Works staff, engineers, and a few contractors in attendance. All in attendance voiced positive feedback on the Madewell education presentation on manhole and horizontal pipe rehabilitation, utilizing Madewell products. The product demos were excellent. Well done, Craig. Your years of experience. Certainly, Sean. We are excited to be in Madewell's Canadian partner and look forward to working with all in attendance and many more across Canada. Here you can see some of the slides. The first slide previous to this was the horizontal pipe, where we did a cementitious coating using Madewell products. This particular slide shows the first process of a cementitious coating on the left and followed by the epoxy coating on the right. Whether it's manhole, horizontal corrugated pipe, tunnels, or institutional tank, industrial tanks, we are here to assist and provide quality, long-lasting products and services, and we look forward to working with all. And with that, I will turn it back to Craig.
All right. I want to make one last point here. Multiple times we've heard that execution is everything. The fact is there are dozens of rehab methods, and each one, of course, has its advantages and disadvantages. No silver bullet, really, until you look at the methods of surface prep, application equipment for consistent delivery, and proven history of performance. It's what makes the mainstay composite liner attractive. Certified applicators of Madewell swear by our conveyance equipment. From the fully equipped mortar trailer with a 5,000 PSI pressure washer, Madewell designs, manufactures, basically all of our equipment that we send out on this trailer, we put together, we build these trailers. So we get the trailer built in Georgia, and we've tried other places, but we really like these trailers. They're well built, heavy duty. They've got heavier axles on them to carry that load of mortar. You can put two skids of mortar on this trailer. You know, when you're doing manhole rehab, usually that's about all you need for a crew to get through the day. If you happen to get through those two, you can go and line up more bags at the warehouse or wherever you have them. But I mean, you're talking just mortar alone, you're talking close to 6,500 pounds. So we start at the front. We do a little bit of everything. We've had, you know, straight bed trucks come in to where we build this equipment on. We have goosenecks like you see in this picture here. The favorite one that we sell the most of is definitely the bumper pull trailer. So you'll have that trailer. Right behind it, you've got the compressor. The compressor's 210 CFM. We also put a hydraulic pack on that compressor. The hydraulics, they run the pressure washer, which the pressure washer is located inside the toolbox. The hydraulics run the mortar mixer and pump that you see there on the back. And then we have attachments for the hydraulics coming off of that mortar mixer or the back of the trailer where you can plug in the hydraulic winch to run the winch for the horizontal lining. We used to put generators on these trailers as well, and that was all hydraulically driven. But what we've come to find out, it's easier and cheaper just to put a suitcase generator in the toolbox. And then right there, the gray box you see on there, that's a plural unit epoxy. We really don't do that anymore. We build epoxy trailers just because you have it out on a truck like that and you're working in cold temperatures. You might have heated your material all night with blanket heaters. But as soon as you get out on the road and it's cold outside, it's like you never heated it. So now we have trailers that are set up really nice, whether you go off of a 15-gallon kit or 150 gallons, 355-gallon drums. And then here's some of the different Again, the Franco double barrel spinning tube there to the left, that's for centrifugally casting mortar onto the manholes. A couple pictures over, you see the culvert pipe. We use a different spinner there for the horizontal lining, completely different. The manhole spinner will not do horizontal pipe. So totally different spinners for pipe and manhole rehab. And then, of course, we have a shotcrete nozzle that goes along with it. So these trailers come with all of this. And then we have some portable equipment, as you see at the bottom right corner with the skid steer there. A lot of times we build these trailers to where they basically have 4 pins in it, and you can just pick up, you can detach the hydraulics, pick it up with a skid steer, and then take it to basically places you can't get with your pickup truck and trailer. And you just have to get a pressure washer back there and a compressor. We've got setups like the one net on the bottom with the blue tote there. That's for epoxy. We don't do that a whole lot, but we can pretty much fab anything for the contractor we're working with or the city or municipality we're working with. Everybody seems to want a little bit of different, and we're a custom fab shop. We can pretty much put anything out there you want to make it work for you. Here's some of the trailers that are out there today. We've got contractors that have had these. This is Stray Cat's trailer right here. We've had contractors that's had these trailers for 15 years or better. What usually goes first is from the barrels, the sand and the mortar and the blades mixing around. So they might have to replace a barrel after so long. The engines, we use Van Air compressors, which is the workhorse of the whole trailer. But yeah, they last quite a while. Pretty simple setup, heavy duty, definitely built to last. We have tons of these trailers across the states and building them every day usually. So the mainstay composite liner enables US to deliver value. I mean, this is by far our best liner that we use. I mean, we do a lot of mortar manholes, our contractors do, but when you can put the composite liner in the ground and put a 10-year warranty on it, it's there to last. I mean, it is rock solid. You can sound it, test it any way you want. Again, a lot of it comes down to the prep, just like anything. You know, don't get the prep work right, you're not going to have a job that turns out good. But once you get that prepped and you pressure wash it and do your pH test and make sure everything's ready for the first layer, which is the cementitious product, they put that on. They'll get in there and sponge it. They'll hit it, knock it down with a trowel, and put a sponge finish on it, or some people like the brush finish, and then they'll spray that epoxy right over that wet mortar. You can come back the next day and beat it with a hammer, and it is just solid as can be. And with that said, we'll turn it back to Chris.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate that. I think the point you were just making about the liner really brings me on to some of the points that I wanted to talk about regarding how we can deliver that value. And for us, the big difference with this liner is the fact that when you're rehabilitating a structure such as a manhole, there's two elements to it. You're providing a structural element and you're providing a corrosion barrier. And many other systems which are more heavily reliant on an epoxy rely on that epoxy to provide both of those things. And that poses two problems. Firstly is the cost. Epoxy is one of the most expensive of all the materials that we use. And if we're having to build that extremely high with the epoxy as opposed to building up a structural cementitious layer first, then that presents a much higher, potentially much higher upfront cost. And secondly, by using high build epoxies or building several layers of epoxy, then you're opening that up to pinholing, you're opening that up to delamination more than using a single layer over a layer of mortar. So that's one big way we can deliver value. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the unique challenges we face in the field. The first thing here is just to look at a brick structure as opposed to a precast structure. So with a brick structure, as many engineers will know, or many people on this webcast will know, one of the biggest challenges is chasing leaks. Because you've got so many places where you can get I&I, and when you plug a leak in one place, it moves around. So the key thing in a brick structure when we're rehabilitating these is to ensure that we get as many of those leaks as we can. We isolate them. We get an area around them. We're either approaching that with, depending on whether it's gushing or a drip, and depending on how the severity of the I&I, we may look at an injection grouted solution, which again is something that we can provide as part of the rehabilitation service. Or potentially, this is where Madewell comes in. Madewell have a hydraulic cement that we can use. So once we're satisfied that we have dealt with the I&I issue, then we go on to the first layer of mortar, and then essentially in terms of the process, it becomes like any other manhole. The mortar can fill any potential voids, or where there's any grout or aggregate missing, the mortar can fill that. And then if we do have any continued issues with I&I, then we can go to an injection grouting solution post lining as well. So again, this pretty much covers what I've just talked about, finding those active leaks, using a urethane injection grout if required, or a hydraulic cement. So again, if you've got, especially in some of the precast structures, where you've got joints, there's potential for roots, like a root ball joint, you're going to have those roots in there. It's important that they're removed. And that really highlights the issue of effective surface preparation when you're doing this, which I'm going to come on to a little bit later. But ensuring those roots are removed and ensuring that any I&I, any active leaks are dealt with is key. And that's where experience comes in, and having a contractor that can look at that and know that they've dealt with any of those active leaks before they then go on to the coating side of the process. Again, missing bricks. The beauty of the ML72 is the fact that it is a structural restoration mortar, and we can actually build that very high. The project that I highlighted earlier on in the webinar, the Husky project, where we had large voids in that shaft itself, we were able to build the mortar into those, fill those holes, and we actually put on that particular project 2 inches of mortar. Unfortunately, I do have some after images and some videos of this actual of this spin casting process at that particular project. Unfortunately, they're not included in these slides, but feel free to contact Madewell, and I will happily provide you with some of the videos of that. So again, we've talked about the leaks. A really important part is ensuring that we remove any coatings, and that's why, again, it's it's such a big thing for us, the fact that we've got these trailers that have everything we need on them from Madewell, so we can carry out the pressure washing side of it before then approaching the actual coating side of it. Now, if you've got, for example, if you've got reinforcement visible, it's also really important that you prepare that. The way we approach that is we actually brush a layer of epoxy onto any exposed steel before we top coat that, and that's an important element that many in this industry, it's an important practice that many in this industry would follow. And once you've got those old coatings removed, that's the foundation of your entire lining. So that's why it's extremely important that that's done effectively. Once you get the mortar on, you've then got an excellent surface to then top coat with epoxy. The biggest challenge is that interface between the epoxy and the substrate, but the fact that you're actually applying, and this again is something that's unique to the mainstay composite liner, the fact that you're applying that mortar and then the epoxy directly on top of it whilst it's still wet, you get that maximal bond from there. Again, to ensure that, we actually look at a brush finish, which a sponge finish, which I was going to talk about a little bit later on. But again, if you've got that mortar on there, you can use a sponge to ensure that you've got a good profile. The point to highlight here, I think, is that we have all the tools we need, and we are set up to ensure that the interface between those two layers of the liner is optimal to ensure the best possible adhesion to it. So again, I mentioned the structural restoration. So again, if we had any of this exposed rebar, any of this exposed reinforcement, any exposed steel, we would make sure that we cover with a layer of epoxy before we then start top coating that. And again, this is something that we can apply not only to manholes, but to larger structures. Again, it's very flexible depending on the situation. So these situations, you can spin cast, as you can see from these images, you can get a brilliant finish, a really high quality finish, and a nice uniform look to it. And again, if we were looking at a larger structure, it may be that we're in there actually shotcreting. And as I mentioned, something like this, the key here is really getting a grip on the I&I, sorting out the issue of active leaks. But once we've done that, the mortar is what is forming the base, I guess almost like a new structure of this manhole itself. So again, compared to precast, once you've sorted out the leaks, this product can really allow us to we almost treat this in the same way as a precast structure. So we talked about the underlayment a little bit, and again, as I mentioned, the surface prep and what's going on underneath that top coating is one of the most important things to ensuring that it lasts a long time. So as you can see here, you'll notice we've got someone in the hole in the full PPE. They are shotcreting this application in this large structure, and then we then sponge to ensure that we've got the profile that we need on the mortar itself. And then there's the application of the 100% solid epoxy over the top. Again, as I mentioned, the unique thing about this liner and for us in terms of project schedules and delivering value is the fact that we can go in there immediately whilst the mortar is still wet. We're not waiting a long time to wait for things to cure. We can go in there, top coat immediately. That's the way that we get the optimum bond, and that's the way that we can complete several of these structures in a day. And once you put on your top coat, then you're left with a fully rehabilitated structure. So as you can see, it's a really nice finish. It looks very neat and uniform, and this is the kind of finish that we've come to expect from using some of Madewell's equipment. So that pretty much covers my element obviously, if you guys do have any questions, please feel free to send them through the channels. But for now, I will hand you back to our host, Mike. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris, and thank all of you for your input and helping our audience better understand the options available across Canada for the rehabilitation of critical infrastructure. Let's recap what we've heard. We now understand the strategic value of a master distributor in Canada for the Madewell products. We heard from Brian Gibson of Go Trenchless Zone in Cambridge, Ontario. Craig spoke of the importance of conveyance equipment because execution is everything. And finally, Chris with StrayCat itemized the contractor's responsibility for a successful underground rehab project. Traditionally, our webinars feature an interactive Q&A session, a time of high-quality engagement between our audience and our presenters. Since this is a pre-recorded webinar, all of those questions you jotted down during this educational journey should be submitted to Don Rigby at don@madewell.net. Don is Madewell's Director of Marketing and Education, and he's assured me that questions will be professionally responded to within 7 to 10 days, guaranteed. Now let's turn it over to Don.
Thank you, Michael. You are a good soul, and thanks for your assistance to make this webinar happen, recorded or live otherwise. I've always asked every one of the subject matter experts to share some of their parting wisdom, 10, 15-second statement. And I'd like Chris, for you to lead off, if you would, please. Give us some parting wisdom.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I think the key thing and the most important thing to highlight here is that this is a system that can be delivered by a contractor with experience that has the support of a of a manufacturer such as Madewell behind them, who can provide them with the on-site support, bespoke equipment, to deliver a tried and proven product that can deliver value to Canada's cities and infrastructure, and can deliver a future-proof solution.
Thank you for that, Chris. And Brian, good friend Brian, and now business partner, please share some parting wisdom yourself.
Thanks, Don. Well, thanks to everybody for organizing this outstanding webcast. We talked about being a system provider for Madewell, and with that, it includes providing not only the product, but a network of contractors to work with, managing I&I with injection products, and an excellent product in the mainstay composite liner. We're eager to get going and welcome any questions or needs from anybody viewing this webcast, and welcome everybody's input.
Brian, let's do some more education, because we did a good job last week, didn't we?
Oh, that was outstanding. Everybody in attendance was, you know, it's a good day when everybody in attendance is eager to participate.
And for the last and final parting wisdom, Craig, please.
Yeah, I want to say the same thing. Thanks, everybody, for putting this, coming together and getting this webinar recorded. I'd just like to say that the mainstay composite liner is a process. It's a proven process. The mortar, the epoxy on the wet mortar, it really does work. It's gives you just such a strong adhesion between the two. So that's the main thing with mainstay, the mainstay composite liner, and I look forward to doing some more education up there, and it's fun working with everybody on all the bids they have and getting the products out to Brian, and I look forward to this relationship we have with Go Trenchless and continuing on with StrayCat. So thanks, everybody.
Greg, I think it's easy to say we love what we do. We're getting pretty good at it, aren't we? Last week we were in Cambridge. Next week we're in Edmonton. Go Trenchless has a booth. Stray Cat has a booth. Madewell has a booth. I encourage anybody on this as privy to this recording prior to the dates next week for No Dig North to please visit with us person to person. I'll be grateful to meet you. One thing that we're big on is if we promise a document, we deliver on that. And if we promise to answer any question that comes across to my email address, I can promise you a response, a good response, in 7 to 10 days. And the email address that you want to make note of is don@madewell.net. From that, I'll have 3 subject matter experts weigh in on the right answer. Maybe all 3 could answer questions, but you'll get it from different perspectives, and that's a good thing. So I'll share this one simple idea that until the next time, I want you to think restoration. I want you to think be safe and certainly be well. And Mike, back to you. One last statement.
Thanks, Don. Always a pleasure working on a webinar with you. This certainly was an education-packed hour. Thank you again to Madewell for sponsoring today's presentation. I'd also like to thank Brian, Chris, and Craig for their time and insight today. As a reminder, any views or opinions presented in this webinar are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent those of Trenchless Technology Canada or Benjamin Media Inc., nor does Benjamin Media Inc. endorse any products or methods presented. Finally, I'd like to thank all of our viewers for watching this webinar. If you'd like to refer to this webinar or share it with your colleagues, you can do so at any time by visiting trenchlesstechnology.com/webinars and selecting today's webinar from the On-Demand Webinars section. The webinar will be available for 1 year. As you exit today's webinar, there's an opportunity to participate in our parting survey. We appreciate your feedback, we appreciate you, and the answers you provide help us shape future Trenchless Technology webinars. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day.